Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have two very special guests for you. We have Lois and Bob Gamerman. They're both co-founders of Soft Stuff Distributors. Lois is the president and CEO, and Bob is the COO. Is that right?
It is correct.
Okay, great. I got it right. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. We are honored.
Of course. So before we go into your personal story and journey and how all this came about, if you can give the audience just a general overview, if they haven't heard of Soft Stuff Distributors, what are you? What do you do?
Well, we are the premier specialty food distributor bringing food and beverage solutions to the hospitality and retail industry between Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Richmond, Virginia, and out to Norfolk, Virginia Beach. We are Mid-Atlantic centric right now.
Oh, wow. Basically cover all of Mid-Atlantic then.
Yes, we do.
And growing.
Yeah, and growing.
Next up is what all of the East Coast and then take over the nation.
Well, go further into Pennsylvania and down to the Carolinas. We'll figure out what happens then.
Okay. Okay, nice. Are you both originally from this area?
Yep.
Both of us. I'm from Baltimore, so is Bob.
Okay.
My parents' best friends lived across the street from Bob, and I didn't meet him until much, later in my late 20s, early 30s. So.
Had a very similar upbringing and experience in life.
Okay. So both around Baltimore or in the city, outside of the city?
Northwest of Baltimore.
The county.
Okay, I
Baltimore
see.
County.
So I know I'm going to take you a way back, but growing up in Baltimore in the county, what were you into? What did you like?
Well, I had four older sisters, much older sisters. So I was an only child with five mothers, essentially. And I had a very entrepreneurial father and caught that bug early on. And I ran some sort of business from the time I was 12 years old. I was the kid who sold candy to the other kids in the neighborhood, or the guy who rented refrigerators to you when you went to college. So I was always into something, and which kind of meant that I was qualified to do nothing. Businesses to open. And I was at a municipal market in Baltimore near Hopkins Hospital. I had an ice cream and cookie store, and a stall became available next to me, and I decided I was going to go into the soft serve ice cream business. And I had to find an ice cream machine. So I went to a trade show, and Lois happened to be the sales manager for Taylor Freezer Equipment. And that's how we met. We became, we figured out that we had very similar backgrounds, and we became very mildly involved for a year until we started dating. And then I then bought the machine because it was less expensive at that point. But I kind of circumvented your childhood. Why don't you?
Oh, so I grew up in a very similar kind of family structure as Bob. I did not have four older sisters or brothers, though. I only have one older brother. I had the greatest parents ever in the world. They were amazing. I grew up in, a neighborhood where kids played outside at night, and it was the 60s, right? It was a very different time in America. My dad was always in business for himself. My mother was a nurse. Both my parents were military vets. My mother went and used her GI Bill to go to Sinai Hospital Nursing School. She was from New York. And business was just something that my parents were into. My mother worked with my dad. They were a great example to me of what a couplepreneurship could look like. Even though she was a nurse, she did always find time to work with my dad. And then when she retired from that, just happened to coincide with the time that my dad, who owned Manor Menswear, which was a small chain of men's clothing stores over in the Dundalk, East Point, Golden Ring area. If anybody in this is listening knows that, they've been gone a really long time now because my dad retired And we had started this business, and my folks decided to step in and see what they could do to help us. So it was a great journey for the first 26 years. They were here like every day.
I'm curious, both of you, it sounds like you were exposed and raised with business and entrepreneurial in the household, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Was that something common you would be talking about, whether over dinner or something, as far as business or this and that? I know you started with several businesses on the side at a very young age, Bob. But was that a common theme at the house?
So, well, for me, I think I just got it through osmosis. My father passed away when I was 14, so I didn't really get an opportunity to put my 2 cents in while he was still in business. But Lois experienced her father's business pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. So really, when we say that we had very similar backgrounds, I mean, we really had very similar backgrounds. So outside of the mid-Atlantic, I would say, the Baltimore, maybe DC area, Philadelphia, my dad was a collector. And I'm not talking about a guy who found a great love for stamps and coins. I'm talking about there was a business model that existed prior to credit cards, where you would go in neighborhoods where people had challenging economic conditions and availability of credit wasn't necessarily there. And you would have a route. My dad owned his own route. So you worked through whatever the installment house would be. Yeah. So you knock doors like 1 day a week, 2 days a week. They would, canvas, as they would call it. We'd call it cold calling, right?
It definitely was part of my I take it back. I did have experience from my father, because my father also was an installment collector.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. Like, how odd is that? We both had, and they were both actually at one point worked for the same house, the same installment house, and they knew each other for sure. And I can clearly remember my dad's cards, like that you used a card system then. And for those people who are listening who don't necessarily know what the installment business was, it was like you would go and sell a living room set. Let's say it was, $300, and you'd come back and collect $20 a week for however many weeks. And then during that time, you try and sell them dishes or blue jeans or whatever.
They called it canvassing. So my father would take me along, and we would have sets of sheets, and we'd go from door to door and say, "Do you need sheets?" So it'd be like 25 cents a week. And they give them the sheets, and we'd come back with our card and collect 25 cents a week. And did you need some clothes? Did you need some bedding? And they built a route, and they had customers. It was a nice little business. So yeah, I did appreciate that.
So when I was in 7th grade, my dad got held up on the streets, and my mother was like, "I can't do this anymore." So he sold his route, and he bought a business called Harris's Department Store, and it was located in Sykesville, Maryland. And it was a wonderful little department store that we would all, my mom worked there. She did the window dressings. She was very proud of that. And I would come on the weekends, and I would work in retail until Hurricane Agnes came through and washed out the bridge, and Sykesville as a town died. It's come back, and it's a wonderful place now. And then he, through association, wound up buying into Manor Menswear, and that's how. So I saw all the various stages of what it took to live a business, and that's what they did. They lived a business. My parents never, when I was a kid, went for long, fancy vacations. We went to Wildwood for 3 days, or back then it was Host Farms up in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, for 2 or 3 days. We thought we were living large.
Yeah.
You had the
Similar experience.
I love how at a young age, all this teaches you a lot of things. I mean, nowadays I have 3 young children, 3 boys myself, and Bob, you're mentioning like canvassing and cold calling door to door. That teaches you so many skills you can use in life and in business.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that, unfortunately, now a lot.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Right. It takes a lot to nurture your business. It depends on the industry that you're in, right?
Sure.
So when I left the municipal market, I was going to open a deli in the brokerage, and
Which is downtown Baltimore.
in downtown Baltimore. And the construction was stalled, so I decided I was just going to get a flower cart and put it in the lobby of the building and have deli sandwiches and a soda refrigerator there. And at that point, Lois and I had started dating. We were living together, and I had an old antique slicer that I set up in her kitchen, and we made sandwiches and took them down to the brokerage and sold them off the cart. And at that time, the fish market had just opened. It was a big entertainment concept they had right in the market square in Baltimore. And they had a grand opening. There were thousands of people there. Probably 10 different bars were in this facility. So we decided we were going to wheel the flower cart out into the middle of the square and sell sandwiches. It was in the middle of November. It was negative something. And we were standing out there, and when the bars let out, we were selling sandwiches to the drunk people coming out. So always find an opportunity. I ended up not going forward with that deli, and Lois and I ended up buying a place in Security Mall of food court operation.
Yep. Franchise.
And we call that our business education. There was a lot of things wrong with that transaction, and we were young and thought we were smarter than everybody else. And turns out we weren't. So we extradited ourselves from that debacle, and the next day started Soft Stuff.
Yeah.
And she'll tell you, actually, I should let you ask questions instead of taking over the show.
No. Go ahead, please. Go continue. So you started Soft Stuff, and it started as first.
That's a very interesting story for how we got to that.
Okay, so most people, I believe, and you can correct me. How many of these podcasts have you done? Like 22 million at this point, and talked to so many people, right? Most people start a business because of a life event, as opposed to having a grand plan, right? They don't sit down and map out what the next 5 years in a business plan are going to look like. Although people lie about it, they say they did, but it's usually a life event. And I'd worked for a company called Taylor Freezer Equipment for, 8 years at that point. And I had met Bob, who was a visionary and still is a visionary businessman. So you have to go back to 1989, 88, 89, when he wanted me to come look at a retail space in Ellicott City because he had a concept in his head for a coffee and dessert business before anybody had ever heard of Starbucks. So I went with him. And I had a business card and he didn't.
I was a schlepper who ran delis.
Right. So the real estate broker sent a thank you note, as people are often known to do, right? And he sent it to the place of business that I was working at in Forestville, Maryland, thanking me for the opportunity to show the space. And he understood we didn't like it, and he was going to help me find the retail space of my dreams to launch our business. Except it wasn't my business, it was Bob's, and I was very happy doing what I was doing. And I was one of the top salespeople for Taylor Freezer in the country. I won every trip, sold hundreds of machines, knew where all the bodies were buried, which actually helped me for the next part of this story, which is I was called into the office and summarily dismissed for being disloyal because the owner of that distribution center opened all the mail that came in and he read a thank you note and thought that I had done something wrong, which was funny because after we launched Soft Stuff and we started doing food shows and we would share floor space in the same arena or the same conference center or convention hall that they were exhibiting in, he would say, "Aren't you glad I fired you? This would never have happened if I didn't do this for you," as opposed to you. And truthfully, it took me 25 years to be able to share with people that I got fired from a job. Because, you do what you're supposed to do. You show up every day, you try and bring value, and you're successful at what you're doing, and you're improving the business for the owners. I was really stung when that happened, and I was embarrassed for many, many, many years that I had been terminated. But I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who can probably relate to that. But now I proudly tell the story because if one thing hadn't happened to cause the sands to shift, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, sitting here with my husband, partner, best friend. We never would have met. We would never be where we are now.
So true. Did you end up finding that location to open that?
No, so she was driving home from getting fired, and one of the businesses I had was the car phone business. Now, notice that wasn't the cell phone business. This was actually bolted to the car. And I put one in her car, and on the way home, she calls me, and she's crying. And I said, "What are you crying about? You know where all the bodies are buried. Let's go sell yogurt mix and toppings and cups, and we'll figure it out." And we did. We found, she had relationships with ingredients people, and we found used machines. There was a shakeout in the industry where machines were becoming available cheap, and we were buying them and reselling them and setting them up. And we dog paddled for the next couple months and created a business. Wouldn't tell her father for 6 months.
Oh yeah.
That we did that.
Yeah. I didn't tell him that we were in business for ourselves, but it didn't matter. I had bought a house right before I met Bob, and I had this massive $323 a month mortgage. So it was easy to make that. And it's easy to do things actually and I'm sure people who are listening can relate to this. The risks that you take at 30 when you have no kids and a $323 a month mortgage versus where you are later in life when you have encumbrances are very different. So for us, it was lightning in a bottle. It was a time and place that we were fortunate enough to be able to seize on opportunity. So he's right. I had a relationship with the guy who ran the distribution center for Axelrod Dairies. And I called him and told him what happened. And we would show up every day. And I'd go out and initially went out and saw all the people that I'd sold equipment to, and they were willing to buy their yogurt from us. And we'd pick it up and deliver it. Bob bought a used freezer truck for how much?
$5,000.
$5,000. It had headlights, right?
At that point, it had headlights.
Right.
Shortly after it did.
So he was doing the deliveries, and I was out making sales. And back then, M&M Mars had come out with crushed toppings to go into blizzards and things like that. That was revolutionary back then. I mean, people can't imagine that you'd have to, before that, take a little mallet and crush up your Oreos for toppings. But we got into that business, and we were selling pretzel cones, because who doesn't like a good pretzel cone to put their ice cream in? And then we just expanded, and I think it was like 6 months in when a friend of Bob's came for dinner, and he brought a cheesecake from a local manufacturer, Casper Classics. They're not in business any longer, but the guy made a hell of a cheesecake, and called him up and asked for permission to come in and see him. And we drove over to his location and listened to what he had to say about his product, and said, well, I think we could add this. And this is God's honest truth. Less than a year, we were selling 1,000 cheesecakes a week, pretty much 3 and 4 of them at a time. That is the truth. He also had a really good carrot cake, and I think a chocolate cake. And then we scraped our pennies together and flew out to Chicago to the National Restaurant Association show, the NRA. I have to be really clear, it's not that NRA, it's the good one. And we met people from a company out of Queens called the Cake Stylist, which manufactured a line of gourmet frozen cakes. The guy called us, Mike Goodman, as he promised to do that following Tuesday. And we drove to New York, took samples back here, he taught us everything we needed to know in like 3 hours. And I began selling them. And then we rented pallet space from Resident Collins Poultry over on Menlo Drive, and had
referred to them as chicken killers, because it's a nice little environment.
Right. And we would bring pallets of product, have it delivered there, and we would keep it in their freezer, and we would pick up product every day from Brian Casper Classics over in Security Boulevard. And we worked out of our house and worked like that for the first year.
Yep.
And then Bob found a physical space over on Security Boulevard in Belmont Avenue. And we went to my dad and said, hey, can you co-sign on a loan for us? Because we need to get a freezer and move in. And he was like, co-sign, I'll lend you the money, but I'm going to come in every day and watch it. And he thought he would only be there for 6 months, and he stayed for 26 years until he died.
Oh,
which
wow.
was crazy great. And so my mom came in and she was making phone calls and she would call customers and get their orders. And like little by little, we grew from the four of us. And then we had a truck driver, and then it was five, and then we hired a first salesperson. And it took a year for us to outgrow the space that we were in on Belmont Avenue. And we moved to Glen Burnie to Furnace branch.
Unfortunately, your father said, I'm only signing a year's lease unless they can guarantee me I'll live longer.
Right. This was
So,
on
yeah.
Belmont Avenue, right? And then and that was truly 30 years ago that we moved to Glen Burnie.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, really, I think this is a fun story. So you want to talk about being committed as a couple and couplepreneurs and as single focused business people. So June 30th, 30 years ago, we got married. It was a Sunday. Most couples.
It was June 6th.
What did I say? June 30th? That's my birthday. I'm so sorry. I never make that mistake. My birthday's June 30th.
Well, the only opportunity I'll have to do that.
Yeah.
So June 6th, right? 1993, we got married. And on June the 7th, we took over distribution for Ms. Desserts, which is a legacy company. They kind of still exist. They're Bakery Express now over on Hollands Ferry Road.
Yep.
Over there, we buy donuts from them. But back then, they were looking to get out of self-distribution, and they came to us, Berliner Ice Cream down in Washington, D.C., and Cisco at Jessup, which is right around the corner from us. We were given an opportunity to vie for $6 million in business that was available in this marketplace. And we put together a really strong strategy and decided that since we were getting married on the 6th, that on the 7th, that's when we were going to begin our world domination or a quest for world domination.
Honeymooned in Glen Burnie.
Yep. And we doubled the size of our business in the next 30 days. We went from 2 trucks to 4. So that's really, for us, was really key. Like, you can go on vacation anytime. If you love the person you're in business with, and cherish that and grow your business. And from there, we just started adding lines and got to where we are now.
We were the dessert people. We became the bread and dessert people, and then snowballed.
Right. And now we just deliver the goods.
Would you say was that the most pivotal moment? I know it's a long, over 30 years, but was there another event that might have happened, you think, that sort of skyrocketed as far as the growth of the business?
Nah, you know what?
It
really is. It's the one foot in front of the other. It was a steady climb. Now I'll tell you that we'll fast forward to March of 2020, where we lost 85% of our business in a heartbeat, which isn't the hardest thing that we had to go through. It was difficult. The hardest thing is still going on. When you take 31 years to grow a business to where we grew it, and then lose that much business, and then in the last year and a half, grow back not only to that same level, but we're about 45% larger than we were in 2019. That has been the biggest challenge we've ever had, is managing that grow back.
Wow, how did that happen? As far as getting up to the 85% you lost, and now not even that, surpassing it to over 40%.
Well,
We swiveled.
we swiveled, right? Everyone else pivoted. We swiveled, as you can see right here, right? I'm swiveling because we had Soft Stuff, which was our core business. And I actually, let me just take a little step back. Everything good that's happened to us, good, bad, or indifferent, but everything good that's happened to us is truly good because of the people that are part of our world, our stuffies, people who work with Soft Stuff, our stuffies. And we have smart stuffies. And at that time, we had 4 people on our leadership team that actually believed there was a pandemic coming. Now, I'm going to tell you, stand up in front of the world and say, I never saw it. I never believed it was good. We were going to look like Italy, was really what I said at the time. But in the end of January of 2020, one of our HR director of human resources, she's originally from the Netherlands, and her parents were both physicians there. So Europe saw what was happening with, at that time, it was the coronavirus is what we would call it, right? Nobody was referring to it as a pandemic at that early on, but Europe saw it before we did. So they began to have meetings like every week, and they had this plan, like we would go remote if that was something we needed to do, if there were X number of cases within a certain radius, what our plans were. And on the 15th of March, we sent an email to everyone and said, on leadership, and said, you need to come in tomorrow. You need to have read or reread Who Moved My Cheese? You need to come in with 5 ideas of what we're going to do if we look like Italy. And everyone came in with a bunch of ideas, and there were 2 that were.
I think there was 4 of us that had on our list, we could be a morgue.
Right, there were 2 ideas. There was we could go into home food delivery, and we could be a morgue. So we own the URL midatlanticmorgue.com, as silly as that might sound, or as macabre.
We had freezer trucks, we had a freezer. People were going to die. It was an unfortunate thing, but we gave them the task of what can we do, and that was one of the options. Fortunately, we decided to go into the people are in need of groceries at this point, and they can't get appointments to pick stuff up. We can create a grocery store that we offer online and have pickup here. And within 7 weeks, we had gotten all of the product that we needed, because we weren't in the produce business, we weren't in the meat business, we weren't in the dairy business.
Didn't have eggs.
We figured out how to build a grocery store, build the website, and we were open in 7 weeks.
Oh, that was crazy.
And failed quickly after, because we were just out of position, and from a marketing standpoint, we couldn't get the message out.
We did some business, but certainly wasn't like we were setting up community pickup points and delivering boxes of produce or things like that. Although we did put some of that together, we started replicating what other people were doing. What we really found, so when I say swivel, we went after grocery store business because they had a supply chain issue and people weren't going into grocery stores. And remember, we had our meeting was before Governor Hogan announced at 11/16 on the 16th that we were shutting down. So we had a plan in place, and unfortunately we had to furlough or part ways with 27 of our employees. That was a major haircut that we took. But we were able to repatriate them, those who wanted to come back. Yeah. So we were doing that, and then we went into e-commerce. We had I called Pitch Berliner Debbie Moser, who used to own Berliner ice cream. They were friendly competitors, and then we used to buy from them because they were the master distributor of ice cream novelties we carried. And at that point, he'd already sold his business, and he has the Bethesda Farmers Market and the one up in Rockville, and there's one in Northern Virginia. And I was like, Mitch, we need to do something. Can we be in the farmers market? You know how much stuff we have. And he said, no. And I said, why? And he said, because none of your stuff is local. I said, well, what is local? And he said, oh, you have meat and this. And I said, well, we can do that. We have meat, because we had already started working with J.W. Trueth. And he said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. If you can do kosher meat and chicken, I can give you a space. And I said, oh, we can get that. I had no idea what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. But in 2 weeks, we had solidified arrangements and partnerships with a kosher meat guy out of New York and David Elliott Chicken out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. And we started going to the farmers market, getting there, leaving here at 4:30 in the morning with an oversized truck. And each week we tried to figure out more things that we needed to either be able to sell or what did we need to do to support it. So we started out with plastic bins and ice and putting meat on top of it, which is not ideal, especially since it was frozen. And then we just started bringing ice cream freezers in and taking the wrapping off that we had and packing it, I bought a generator. It took a life of its own, but it really gave a proof of concept that there was a market out there for kosher meat and chicken. Not people who buy kosher knew that there was, but it worked in Bethesda. But we parlayed that through our relationship that we have with Bassett's Ice Cream out of Philly. Bassett's was on Goldbelly, and I don't know if you know who Goldbelly is, but they're a very large, successful online platform for restaurant quality food. So if your favorite restaurant's in Elmira, New York, and you have to get a cheesesteak from there, they're probably on there, and you get sent the stuff. So we made an introduction. They made an introduction to Goldbelly, and they let us put up kosher meat and chicken right before Rosh Hashanah in
Yeah, I mean,
2020.
there was some resistance because we're not an iconic restaurant, and that's what their theme was. But when we told them that we had kosher proteins, they said, well, that's something we need, and we launched.
Right. And all of a
We-
sudden we were doing $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a week, which I gotta tell you, that was big dollars. So come October, we said, can we open another store? We had bought the name Chesapeake, actually we registered it. No, we didn't buy the name, but Chesapeake Bay Gourmet, and we could sell crab cakes and iconic Maryland foods. And they would like that idea. And then we said we have Smith Island cakes. So we own the brand Chesapeake Bay Smith Island cakes, which quickly became like the largest and fastest growing Smith Island cake in the country that we were selling through Goldbelly. It took like a year for us to ship 13,000 of them, which was crazy. And it is a brand that we sell through Soft Stuff and that we still sell online. Heart-shaped steaks, and
We put together packages of sweetheart ribeye dinners because we had the sides and we had the desserts, and we just put stuff together, lunch boxes. And so the direct consumer business became one of the lanes that we occupied, the grocery wholesale business. And then as we were building those things, our core business started coming back. So the hotels and the conference centers and the corporate cafeterias started slowly repatriating, and that convergence of increase in sales took us back up to where we were, and then it just kept going. And we're still not fully repatriated on the food service side.
but we're pretty close. I mean, our food service side certainly is doing 30% more than it was doing back in 2019. And you should know that for the first 9.5 weeks of 2020, we were 21.5% ahead of where we were for the same time frame in 2019. Everything was, sunny and pretty, and we were happy. But stuff happens, and you make a decision collectively or independently that you're either going to live or die. Bob and I never had that conversation about whether we would live. We knew we would, and we're scrappy and we're smart, if I can say that immodestly. And we knew that we would figure it out. And we always had trust and faith that things would work out. And we had to have a great group of people we work with and here. And we have a really large network. And people wanted to talk with us. They wanted to help us. They wanted to give us ideas. I can't tell you how many lunch and learns we went to and how many webinars and they might seem like you were always hoping that the keys to the castle were magically going to be on that call to help you get to the next level. Well, I think what I realize is that there's not one set of keys. It's like the janitor who walks down the hall and you can hear him rattling. There's a lot of different keys. You just got to put them together and then figure out where you go. And then we were blessed with great relationships. We were, I don't know, one of the four companies that Bill Sorensen, who was, and you notice I mention people by name. It is not name dropping, it is gratitude. These people helped us. They shouldn't be an unnamed entity, this guy or that person. These people went out of their way. They saw value in Bob and myself, and they wanted to help us. So Bill was our Maryland Department of Commerce representative in Howard County. We'd met him a few times right at the beginning of the pandemic. He reached out to see if we'd be one of the 4 or 5 companies that would be willing to do an economic impact report for Governor Hogan to show how this beginning of the pandemic was affecting us. And at that point, we were down like 40%. So in exchange for providing that information, we found out early when the idle application for that $500,000 that was coming down the pike. So we were like number 41 for the state to have filed that. I filed our application. Like we stayed that night because we knew it was happening. Most people had left. They didn't have their documents at home. They would have them in the office. We didn't leave until we got it done. And that gave us a kick. And then there was PPP money, and we worked with the bank that we were working with at the time. And we got our first PPP loan that came in. And that was really helped us. And we used that money to do exactly what it was intended to do. The same thing with PPP2. We used the Enterprise Center in Philadelphia, which is an SBDC, a small business development center. Ian Lawrence, shout out to him. He had sent a broadcast email that I'd gotten that they were holding a webinar in PPP2. And because our NACS code was what it was, we got 2.5 times, which really helped. All of it's been forgiven. We had a great contact at the SBA who let us know when the idle loan number 2 was going to go through and helped us get through that. And then we were fortunate enough to been asked for quotes about how all these programs helped. And last summer, we were featured in a national press release for Administrator Guzman when they had like one business from like what we do, another type business, and a couple of other companies got to really speak highly of how the government supported us. And we were working our asses off. And our director of sales, shout out to Mary Jo, said in June of 2020, nobody has salespeople out there. Let's bring the salespeople back, because we had a couple in on the phones. And they went out and hit the street, went after all independent business out there and opened up
753 new accounts
in 1 year.
in 1 year.
Wow.
And there was a lot of factors in that. There was nobody else out selling. Nobody was paying attention to these customers. There was a supply chain issue, so they were taking anything they could get. And there was an increasing Bubba Gump effect where other distributors were wounded or going out of business, and that vacuum created opportunity.
Right. So we were already out on our fishing boat, when the storm came, and that's what he refers to as the Bubba Gump effect, or shrimp boat, I should say. So we've been lucky, really, truly lucky, and we're grateful. I can't say that enough every day. And all that time, during that time, I would like to give a shout out to Matt Stevens from Somebody Cares Baltimore. So I turned my phone off. Somebody Cares Baltimore. So the weekend after the pandemic struck and everything was shut down, Mary Jo was on Facebook, saw this post by a former employee who said maybe Soft Stuff can help you, that there were charities that were looking for somebody that had a refrigerated truck that might be able to help deliver food. And we were like, yeah, what else we got? Nothing but trucks and a few extra drivers, and certainly not enough business to support that. So let's figure it out. And we took a call with Matt, who is also the chaplain for the Baltimore City Police Department. And he is also, I think he is the head of all the chaplains in the chaplain union in the country. But Somebody Cares Baltimore needed a partner who would be able to pick up meals that were being produced in a commissary down in Beltsville and delivered in Calverton and delivered into Baltimore to very needy neighborhoods. These were needy before the pandemic. Pandemic strikes and things are shut down. These were people who were starving. And he gave us the honor and the privilege to be able to deliver 155,000 meals in a year on their behalf. He paid for the truck and the driver. We didn't make any money off of it, didn't need to. But it was, we certainly needed to make money, but that was how we could participate in giving back to the community. And then on a Saturday, we get a phone call from World Central Kitchens, which is, Jose Andres's philanthropic effort. They needed freezer space. We had freezer space. So we took in pallets and got that food out into the community. And then we were working with many other groups like the Columbia Cares group of people. And then
doing our grocery effort, we had hooked up with a produce company, and we knew that this was a reality. We didn't know how bad it was. That produce distributors destroy thousands of pounds of product a week because it's close to their expiration date.
It's on the turn.
So you can't sell them to grocery stores because they don't have enough time to sell them to users. So they're throwing them away. We had a truck there, and somebody said, "You know, they're throwing all this away." So we started picking up produce and dairy that they were getting rid of, and we take it to Matt Stevens or Columbia Cares, and there was about 140 tons of produce that we rescued during that time. So that was a nice.
It was nice to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Made us feel good.
Looking at the business today, what would you say, what percentage is D2C e-commerce or wholesale grocery or other lines?
Yeah, sure.
So we're back up to probably north of 85% in our core business that we started with, the food service. Our retail effort, our grocery store effort is just growing. It's a difficult, we stayed away from it for years because it was a different game than we were used to playing. So we're creating the contacts, we're getting ourselves into position, do a lot of the independent grocery chains.
Convenience stores
And convenience stores. So that would represent probably half of the remainder, 7, 8, 9%. And then the rest is a growing direct-to-consumer e-commerce business. We operate under probably 15 different brands online. We don't compete with our customers, our wholesale customers, in that way. And that is a growing, a lot of potential in that segment. We also are operating as a third-party partner for other people who have frozen products online that need somebody to fulfill it for them, because that's not an easy thing. You need the insulated containers and the proper dry ice and the proper handling. So that's a potential business for ours. And
we are a certified woman-owned company, so we picked up a nice piece of business delivering as a partner to Aramark for the prison business that they've gotten. So if all in all of these pieces, we diversified our portfolio. We carry products now that we never would have carried before. We have a huge presence in grab-and-go prepackaged products that are on a gourmet level. You don't come to us for like 7-Eleven food. You know what I mean? Convenience store. You come to us for a better quality, something that you can't get anywhere else. Most of the lines that we carry, we're pretty much the exclusive distributor for. So we really figured out how to diversify our portfolio. We started going back to traveling, going to food shows in 2021, trying to source new, better, different. It all made a difference. And, currently where we are in what we're doing in revenue now is truly 45% larger than we were in 2019. But it's about being adaptive. I'm happy to announce we have solidified a partnership with Red Diamond Coffee out of Alabama. After being in business going on 34 years, we never did coffee. Coffee goes with desserts and specialty foods, but we couldn't find the right partner. So they are the right partner for us. They are providing all of the equipment, placing it at no charge for our customers, between coffee pour overs and iced tea and cold brew equipment. So there's 10 of us going to coffee college on June the 20th in Moody, Alabama.
Fun. What would you say drives and motivates you today?
You can take that.
world domination.
Yeah.
There's so much potential out there, and we always say if we can get this right, we can be everywhere. Because what we bring is added value. We sell service, we sell relationships, and there isn't a lot of that especially in our industry. People crave a partner they can depend on. And we strive to be a true partner to everybody, not only our customers, but our employees and our vendors and our community. And then there's a lot of potential adjacent to what we do. You know, we have a really good group of people who could be investors in projects that, you know, we could acquire other companies in growth,
which we're open to.
We're setting up geographically in other places, segmental diversification. And then we have a true opportunity that we've been working on, and that is in the cold storage business. So we're looking to build a very large freezer facility where we'll offer cold storage capacity for the industry.
But our challenge is finding land and or a building. But I'll tell you that, Otto, because that's what you do every day.
Yep, I completely understand. You've mentioned several times different team members and other C-level executives there. How important is your team, and how do you go about finding them? Because talking to entrepreneurs now, a lot of them are having difficulties finding people. I don't know if you're having a similar situation. If not,
oh, for sure. Are you kidding me? Well, we're really lucky because our leadership team stayed intact with the exception of one seat. And that's where we're hiring an HR generalist. So if anybody's looking for a job in HR, contact us. But aside from that, our leadership team stayed intact, good, bad, or indifferent. We didn't do any wage cuts. We did wage freezes, and when we could take that off, which was last year, we did. It is a bold-faced lie when people tell you they did it themselves. If where you sit today is because you are the sum total of all your previous experiences as a person, then where your company sits is the sum total of all the efforts and the greatness of your leadership team, or the lack thereof. In our case, it is the greatness of our leadership team, the commitment, the fact that people really feel like they're stuffies, you know, that they matter and that their opinion matters, and that they didn't see Bob and myself give up. It was never a question as to whether we were going to make it.
And when we asked them to put their shoulder on the load, we were standing next to them. And that's, you know, I think they value that.
Yeah. And you ask what motivates. I love what I do. I love the food industry. I love hospitality. It's a great space to be in. Now, people will say people always eat. You have a safe business. Well, what we found during the pandemic was, while that was true, people need to eat. It was where they chose to eat changed. So it was restaurants and hospitality venues were closed because the government had this fear that we would die if we went into restaurants and we were closely exposed to one another. Our customers, our smart, adaptive customers, found the value of curbside and pickups and delivery and adapting their menus. And fortunately, they saw value in us to allow us to take that journey with them and to support them.
I want to address something you asked about the value of leadership. I think that for me, and it's been this way for a long time, I'm just trying to figure out how to address it, is really the value is finding the leader that could be, you know, finding young talent that have the focus and the ability and the work ethic to become a leader. And I'd love to figure out how to find those people and nurture that. Because I got to tell you, a 25-year-old me would love to find a company like this to learn everything I could.
I like to think that Bob and I have stayed relevant. I mean, you can look at us and say, oh, those guys are older, but
Damn.
no, I close my eyes, I'm still 32, by the way. I think I bring the same level of excitement and commitment every day today that I brought 34 years ago. And sure, I like to say we walked through fire and ate broken glass over the last 3 years. But I'm not resentful of that. And some people might say, well, that's because your company survived and look how well you're doing. Okay. But we learned a lot. And if nothing else, it was the diversification and of channels of business necessary in order to have survived. And it was being creative and adaptive and not saying we knew it all. I wake up every day saying I know less than I knew yesterday. So let's figure out what we need to learn more today. We're never the smartest people in the room. Because if we were, we would be in the wrong room. So we listen, we ask lots of questions, we rely on gut instinct. If that certain something is there that it's just not right, then we try and stay away from those opportunities. We make mistakes, we like to learn from them. And we have goals and ideas and hope for tomorrow.
What would you say is your biggest challenge today at Soft Stuff?
People finding really good people who want to come in customer service, who want to come in as drivers. I mean, business is not the challenge. We have that, right? We have an amazing banking relationship. I'd like to give a shout out to Fulton Bank and Debbie Goldberg, who's a senior vice president of lending for the SBA portion of their business. Because when our bank that we were dealing with in the beginning of COVID didn't choose to support the industry or us, we began a conversation with her, and she's the one who nominated us for the SBA Small Business People of the Year award, which was crazy.
Really?
Like, right, that your bank would do that.
And so we went to the event for the Small Business of the Year awards
In DC.
in DC, and there were other. Every state had a representative, and they brought their family, their kids. We brought our banker. So it was interesting for pictures.
Yeah.
And very interesting. Lois had asked her how many other of her customers did she nominate for this award. She said, I've never nominated anybody for this award before.
In 26 years.
So it was a very interesting thing. So
Right.
our relationship with her is very valuable.
And of course, we also won the SBA, the Maryland State Small Business People of the Year award, which is different than the SBA award, which was very humbling. We don't think we did anything so remarkable. We did what we knew to do, right? And that is show up every day and reclaim the hill. And I recognize that there are other people that weren't as fortunate, that didn't make it through, and I feel for them, but failure was never an option.
I love that. What do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
You want to take that? You know a lot now.
Well, I think a lot of what's valuable to me, I knew then. One was never pretend that you're so smart that that's what got you where you are, because somebody's going to expect you to do it again. And I'm not sure that that's possible. But it comes down to I understand that they're not that smart either. If it can be done, I can do it. Mm-hmm. It's just I'm addicted to acronyms, so there's things that I live by. WIP is one of them: work ethic, honor, integrity, and pride. If you got that, you're ahead of the game right away. Well, go ahead. I'll go to my thoughts later.
So one of the things I wish I knew then, that I absolutely know now, is the value of knowing your numbers and having clean, good, steady books, and not being, because you show when you're good, you're bad, and you're ugly. I can tell you what we did well. I can tell you what we did okay, and what we didn't do well. A number of years ago, we were just like many small businesses at that time, and we're not such a small business now, right? Was a shoebox full of receipts once a year to your accountant. I wish I had known then never to do that. That was bad. They should be closing your books out every month by the 15th and have solid numbers that you can rely on. But those are things we learned. And it's super important because, like, I have my thrilling degree in criminal justice, criminology that has absolutely no relation to business. Um, when you are presented with the opportunity to take advantage of executive education business classes, take them. Don't say, I can't. Don't make excuses. Take them. Through WeBank, the Women's Business Entrepreneurial National Council, which we are proud partners of. They're the largest third-party certifier of women-owned businesses in the country. Back in 2014, gave me an opportunity for a scholarship to attend the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth, right? At that time, it was growing your woman-owned business. And 2 weeks after that, they were having growing your minority-owned business. I went to them like 2 days into the 64 hours of intense learning that had happened that week, and said, this is really an amazing event, amazing learning process for me, but it's really unfair because I have a partner. And how do I go back and explain to him everything I've learned here this week? Because right now I'm like a one-wheeled bicycle and I'm falling over. And they say, oh, in 2 weeks we have growing your minority-owned business at Dartmouth. Your husband, your partner can go there. I said, yeah, well, that was great, except he's white. So, they said, well, we let 2 white guys in, and they were serious about that. And I understand that because there's a power dynamic that exists in a room that's supposed to be set up for women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses, that if you pervert that, it takes the openness and willingness and the relaxed shoulder aspect of learning away. But he went begrudgingly because he didn't feel like he was good enough, smart enough to be able to earn the opportunity to be at Dartmouth.
So I spent 7 years at Towson State University running a fraternity. That was my college experience. I don't have a degree, but and she's right. I said, you know what? I'm taking up somebody else's space, and I'm not sure I'm the guy that should be there. But it was one of the most valuable and inspiring weeks.
And then we went 6 more times for every class that was offered. We went on campus, off campus, or whatever organization. And because of that, we really began a great relationship with Dr. Alva Taylor, who's the Dean of Digital Marketing for Dartmouth. And he was one of those people who jumped on video calls with Bob and myself at the beginning of the pandemic, trying to help us figure it out. I mean, we have this naturally great network of people because people want to help, because we are always the ones who say, what can we do for you? And it's really easy for us to give, and it's not easy for us to take. But there were people who were waiting in the wings who said, okay, let me help you. Let me give you something. And all of it combined got us to the seat where we are today, to be able to say, we're growing, we're expanding. We bought another 7,200 square foot of freezer that we're looking to put in this building. It's been here for a couple months while we work through the permits, and we keep growing. And we're trying to do it smartly and intelligently. And our plan, we always say, is world domination. But we're good at what we do, and we want to continue it.
One of the other things we learned way far into our existence, that if I went to a business school, I probably would have known. So Lois's father was involved in running the payables here, and we would grow rapidly, and he would keep looking at us and saying, yeah, we're growing, but where's the money? And I couldn't give him a good answer. I mean, it's business cycles. You have receivables, you have inventory. I knew how to figure all that out. We went to a
CFO
roundtable breakfast, and there was a guy there who was speaking.
Rick Kors from Evergreen.
And he was talking about, you have to figure out when you need to take the chips off the table, when you need to consider selling, when you need to put money away. And he came to a fact that we just didn't think about, that in reality, every time you grow $1 million in your business, it costs you $200,000 in cash.
And working capital.
There's no way around it. And you don't think about that. You go, we grew. And it costs you money to grow. And if you keep growing, it keeps costing you money. You never catch up.
Right.
You have to, that's why you have capital needs. And that was a very valuable lesson to us that I wish we knew in the beginning and would have had that information.
Did we talk too much? I'm sorry.
No, not at all. A lot of valuable lessons. Coming to an end here, though, now, what does the future look like for you and the company? What are you most excited about? Besides world domination, of course.
Okay. Aside from the combination, the numbers are growing very steadily, very strongly. We're profitable. We have a great organization here. And what excites me is the expansion in products, expansion in geography. Like we were doing Ocean City. We started that last year, which we stayed away from for 31 years. Last year, we did the restaurant show with 9 booths. This year, we had 17. We have hundreds of customers down there. What does the future look like? The future looks like Soft Stuff. In 10 years from now, it's our extreme desire and plan to be $100 million a year company. And that will happen.
See, I'm a little more aggressive than that. I want $1 billion, but I'll take 100.
What's the end plan, the end game? Meaning, do you plan, once you take it to whatever level you have in mind, maybe sell it, private equity, or I don't know if there's legacy family or employees or stuffies, as you like to call them?
Well, there's an opportunity for stuffies. There's certainly an opportunity for divesting ourselves for the right, plan, but we would always take care of our leadership. So this doesn't just land on for Bob and myself. There is no plans for our children. We have 2 boys to come into the business. It is not their path. I think that this is a really important point I'd like to make for everyone who's out there who thinks, who feels guilty about the amount of time that they spend on their business. Our business is the 3rd child. Soft Stuff is the 3rd child. One of our kids is good with that. The other one resents it dramatically. It's neither one of their paths, and they shouldn't walk it. It's the path that we chose. So we have our succession plan in place, but it will not include them, and it shouldn't, because it's not their life.
Sure. When you're not busy working, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
Well, and really talking business is fun for us. So we do that a lot. I happen to still play baseball, old man baseball. There's a senior baseball league that I play in. And it unfortunately hurts more and more every year I play. I own a guitar.
He's good. He's good. He plays for me every night.
Oh, that's nice.
What do you like
We
to
like
do
to-
besides listening to my guitar?
We like to talk. We do like to spend time together doing that. And now that we're really coming out of the depths of the last 3 years, because you have to understand that we didn't take a day off for the first 10 months of the pandemic. We worked 7 days a week before we could feel like we could take a day off. So moving out of it, I like to spend a little time, at the beach. That would be a nice thing to do. I always have stuff on my plate, so I never get to say I'm going to sleep till 3:00 in the afternoon, right? One day I'll do that. I like painting and I like drawing, and I'd like to get back to that.
Nice. If people want to learn more about you and Soft Stuff, where can they go to and get more information, please?
Well, please, we invite you to visit us at www.GoSoft.com. GoSoftStuff.com.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure, really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are honored that you felt us worthy to speak with.
The honor's all mine. Take care.
Be well.
Stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.